She gave up food for books. The Millionaire CEO noticed and made a decision that haunts today. In the heart of a city that thrived on glitter and ambition, a mysterious figure strode through the crowded streets. Her name was Lila, a bookworm turned ghost, more familiar with the scent of worn pages than the aroma of fresh meals. Every morning she walked past the bustling cafes, her stomach growling louder than a passing freight train. She simply couldn't afford it, not with the mountains of novels piling up in her tiny apartment. Lila had made a pact with herself. Food was a distraction. Books were everything. But this wasn't just a quirky choice. It was a desperate leap into a world where words could fill the empty spaces of her life. Her friends whispered about her strange habits, and many thought she was losing her mind. "You can't survive on just pages," one of them cursed, their eyes wide with disbelief. But Lila had become a vessel of knowledge, her heart beating in rhythm with the dramatic tales of lost loves and daring adventures. The deeper she dove into her books, the thicker the air became around her, charged with secrets and stories that seemed to gravitate toward her. Intriguingly, this strange devotion attracted the attention of one enigmatic figure, the millionaire CEO of a massive publishing empire named Jared Reed. On a fateful day, as Lila immersed herself in the latest bestseller in the library, Jared walked in, his presence slicing through the otherwise quiet sanctuary. It felt electric. Lila's heart raced. She didn't know who he was then, but something about his confident stride and piercing gaze drew her in like a moth to a flame. The hours passed, and when their eyes crossed, the world around them blurred. Reality shifted, and Lila felt a jolt of anticipation. She was unsure if it was excitement or fear. Maybe both. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the days passed, the tension between Lila and Jared thickened. She kept catching glimpses of him, always just out of reach, like something she dreamed of yet couldn't fully grasp. Lila found herself torn between her passion for books and the growing fascination with this man who seemingly viewed her longing and sacrifice with intrigue. What decision did he have in mind that would turn their strange ballet of glances into something that could haunt them both forever? Little did she know, the choice he would soon make would alter the course of her life in ways she couldn't begin to fathom. What would he do next? And would Lila's sacrifice finally pay off? Or would it lead her down a path of no return? The atmosphere in the library crackled with an unspoken tension, as Lila settled into her usual corner, flipping through the pages of a worn novel. Every turn of the page was a brief escape from reality, a world where she could forget her hunger. But it was hard to concentrate with the enchanting presence of Jared lurking so disturbingly close. In a place where silence reigned, his whispers of power and allure floated through the air, taunting her senses. Then it happened, she caught him staring. That glance, as electric as a live wire, sent jolts radiating through her heart. Tension built between them, heavy and almost painful, while her stomach growled in protest. Each day she pushed her limits further, sacrificing meals for the sake of more stories, more adventures. What was one more day without food if she could immerse herself in the life of fictional heroines? But as she scribbled notes in the margin of her latest read, her mind raced with potential futures. Would Jared approach her? Did he sense the vulnerability clinging to her like a shadow? She shook her head, attempting to clear the dizzying thoughts. No way, she muttered quietly, smirking at her ridiculous fantasies. He was a millionaire, a CEO. She was just a ghost of a woman lost among the paperback stacks. But the thought of him lingered, frosty yet warm. Her heart and her hunger warred. Days rolled on in a strange, swirling cycle of anticipation and dread. Then Friday arrived, and she sat at her usual spot, a chaotic storm brewing within her. The air felt charged, electric. As he strode through the entrance, determination etched into every feature. He approached with purpose, his eyes locked onto hers. Lila's breath hitched. Was this finally the moment everything would change? "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice smooth yet insistent, holding her gaze like a magnetic force. Lila nodded, her throat dry, the lump growing where hunger had lived for so long. He led her outside, where the bright sun assaulted her senses. It made her stomach churn, but she followed him, curiosity overwhelming caution. Lila, he began, his eyes searching hers. I've noticed you around here. You love books. Her heart skipped. Was this truly how he saw her? As a mere bookish shadow? I see you in this place every day. So engrossed in those stories that you seem to forget about everything else. Your well-being, it matters. She flinched, his words slicing through her defenses. He noticed. I want to help you, he continued, brow furrowing. I have an offer. A chance to join my team. I can introduce you to the world of publishing. It might even change your life. The offer settled in her chest, heavy and suffocating. This was what she had dreamt of without even realizing it. The thrill of the unknown tinged with a rush of fear. But where would it leave her life as it was? Would she still have time for her beloved books? And then something darker tugged at her, the realization that accepting his offer would force her to confront the very truth she had buried. Lila hesitated, her thoughts spiraling. I don't know what to say. Jared's expression softened, revealing a vulnerability that cut through her guarded heart. What he offered was tantalizing, yet the shadows of her past and the uncertainty of her future loomed over her like storm clouds ready to burst. Before she could react, he reached out, brushing his fingers against her hand, sending shockwaves of unforeseen warmth coursing through her. In that moment, time suspended. Would she take the leap of faith? Would accepting his hand mean cherishing her passion, or would it lead her down a path of regret? Before she could take a breath, a piercing scream shattered the air nearby, drawing their attention. Panic surged through her veins as she turned instinctively toward the noise. What would she face next? The weight of the moment settled on her chest, heavy with choices and the taste of fear. What was happening? And would this chaos alter her decision forever? The scream faded into a haunting silence, a stark contrast to the pulse racing in Lila's ears. She grasped Jared's hand tighter, an instinctual reaction fueled by the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The world around them blurred, and all that remained was the electric connection of their fingers. Stay here, Jared commanded, his eyes darkening with worry as he turned away to approach the source of the scream. Lila felt an unsettling combination of dread and curiosity. She couldn't just stand back, her heart told her to follow with cautious steps. Lila trailed after him, the warmth of the sun now a distant memory. As they rounded the corner of the library, the sight before them froze her in place. A woman lay sprawled on the ground, surrounded by a small crowd of anxious onlookers. Panic morphed into confusion in Lila's throat as she recognized the woman, the librarian who always greeted her with a smile. Call for an ambulance, Jared shouted, his voice cutting through the thick air. Lila's legs felt heavy as she watched Jared kneel beside the unconscious librarian, desperately checking for signs of life. His expression was a mixture of urgency and fierce determination. She fought to process the chaos blooming around her, but fear clawed at her heart like a wild animal. Jared, she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. What happened? Not now, Lila. He shot her a quick glance, then focused back on the librarian, fingers moving quickly as he felt for a pulse. In that moment, her mind wandered. Was this a fate-driven twist? The busy streets outside roared with life, oblivious to the tragedy unfolding in their small pocket of the world. Lila couldn't rip her eyes away. For all her days spent among books, twisting narratives in her mind, she never considered being a part of a real-life crisis. The stillness of the air felt unnatural, weighty. A bead of sweat trickled down her back as she grappled with an unrelenting urge to aid, yet felt paralyzed by the gravity of the scene. What if something worse unfolded? Why was it always in moments like this that decisions became clearer? The gnawing hunger that dulled her senses in the library was overshadowed by a primal urge. She needed to act or she would regret being just a bystander. Is she breathing? Lila's voice cracked through some instinctual fog as she began inching closer. She fought against the fear, pushing it aside as she remembered her habitual comfort with books, a realm of knowledge where she could become something greater. Maybe I can help. Jared looked back, his worry replaced by a spark of something else, a glimmer of hope. We need to tilt her head, make sure her airway is clear. Can you help me with that? Yes. She dashed to his side, grounding herself in the task before her. Together, they maneuvered the librarian carefully, lifting her shoulders slightly to clear her airway. The crowd, now murmuring and gasping, faded into the background. The weight of her past, her decisions, and all that she thirsted for merged with the gravity of the moment. This wasn't a book. This was real life, chaotic and nerve-wracking. Yet there was a flicker of empowerment building within her as sirens wailed closer. Jared's gaze met hers, and in it, she saw something shift. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice barely above the chaos. "You did good." Heat rushed to her cheeks, but it wasn't tea from embarrassment. It was an awakening. This was what she wanted: action, impact. But just as a sense of clarity washed over her, the scream echoed once more in her mind. It was an omen, a chilling reminder of how fragile everything truly was. What had she stepped into? And more importantly, was this the beginning of a new chapter, or merely the prelude to a darker tale? The answer hung in the air as the paramedics arrived, ready to take control. But with each step of their approach, Lila felt the weight of choices echo through her. What would she do next? Lila's heart raced as the paramedics took over, their presence both a relief and a fresh wave of anxiety. The flashing lights painted surreal colors on the faces of the onlookers. Worried whispers floated through the air, their curiosity morphing into dread. She pulled away from Jared's side, unable to watch the chaos unfold. Instead, she stepped back, her mind swirling with unanswered questions. What if they couldn't revive the librarian? What if... No, she couldn't think like that. She drew a deep breath, the cool air settling her thoughts, but the tension that electric dread remained coiled within her. She had done something, she reminded herself, something important. But why did it feel so hollow now? "Lila?" Jared called. His voice snapped her back to the moment. He was staring at her, brow furrowed, concern etched across his handsome features. "You okay?" She nodded, forcing a smile, though it felt feeble. There was so much more swirling around them, and a sharp chill crept along her spine. "I just need a minute." He nodded and turned back to the scene. As she backed away, she sought the solace of a nearby bench, its cold metal grounding her thoughts. The scene at the library turned into a hazy blur, voices drifting in and out, but one phrase pierced through the fog: collapse from dehydration. How could a vibrant woman like the librarian succumb to something so basic? The vulnerability of life felt overwhelmingly present, smothering her. Had she been so caught up in her own pursuits that she overlooked the fragility of those around her? The bustling energy of the academic world faded. It had all been an illusion, a distraction. She pulled out her phone, heart pounding as she searched for answers online. Without any clear direction, she typed dehydration signs, praying for some sense of clarity, thinking back to the missed hugs, lively laughter, and those endless books. Hours spent tangled in stories had robbed her of connections outside her literary worlds. Had the librarian been trying to reach out? Xander, her old professor, had always warned that books couldn't replace human connection, and now she wished she'd listened. The relief of the paramedics finally sped to pale hope as they wheeled the librarian away, unconscious but at least alive. "It's going to be okay," Jared was saying, clutching Lila's arm gently. But the hollow feeling returned, nagging at her. She watched as a stretcher disappeared into the ambulance, a sudden wave of guilt crashing over her. "Oh God, what if I could have done something more?" she whispered, her breath shaky. Jared's gaze intensified as he held her closer. "You did what you could, Lila. You jumped into action. You helped." But the dread clawed at her insides. There was something foreboding about that moment: the scream, the librarian, the crowd. They felt like threads in a larger tapestry she couldn't yet see. It was only a few days ago she had turned down a dinner invite to stay glued to her latest read. "Life is unpredictable, you know? All those stories I read, they never really prepared me for this," she finally admitted. "Life doesn't come with a script," Jared replied, his voice steady. "But that's why we need to cherish it, to embrace it." Lila swallowed hard, the promise of action aching to burst forth from her. What if the warmth of books and the chill of life blended to form a strength she had yet to discover? Though clarity dawned for a moment, a shadow still loomed over her heart, a whisper yet to be acknowledged. Suddenly her phone buzzed, and a notification popped up. A headline flashed across her screen: "Mysterious illness strikes local residents." The words swirled in front of her, twisting the pit of her stomach. Lila glanced at Jared, dread pooling in her gut. This isn't over, is it? Jared's intense gaze locked onto hers. Not even close. With the air thick with uncertainty, the world around them felt dangerously unpredictable. What other shadows lurked in their peaceful town? The unease gnawed at her. What awaited her beyond the veil of normalcy? Lila sat on the cold bench, her pulse racing as she stared at the ambulance fading into the distance. A knot of worry twisted inside her, tightening with each passing moment. She could still feel the shock vibrating in the air, an echo of the chaos that had just unfolded. The panic among the crowd lingered like smoke, unseen but suffocating. I can't just sit here. The words slipped from her lips against her will. The fight to gain some control over her spiraling thoughts outweighed the urge to remain still. She stood abruptly, her chair squeaking behind her as she faced Jared. We need to figure out what's happening. This isn't just about dehydration. There's something else. As she spoke, the determination that had been buried beneath her fear began to resurface. Jared's brow wrinkled. A look of concern mingled with admiration. What do you mean? Look at all this. She gestured toward the crowd still buzzing with whispers, eyes darting to the empty space where the librarian had collapsed. There are too many people getting sick. Dehydration doesn't just strike out of nowhere. What if it's part of something bigger? Like a contagion? His voice took on a heavy tone, and the weight of his words hung in the air. The thought chilled her further, raising goosebumps along her arms. What if it is? Lila whispered, panic rising in her throat. I can't shake the feeling that I need to understand this to help. Before Jared could respond, Lila was already walking away, her heart propelling her forward as she headed toward the library once more. The familiar smell of old books and worn pages lingered in the air as she pushed through the entrance. A few people were still milling about, their conversations hushed, glancing nervously at the empty information desk. Shadows danced in corners, and the warm wood felt foreign against her skin. Lila, wait. Jared's footsteps echoed as he hurried to catch up, his voice a lifeline tethering her back from the edge of her impulsive retreat. I need to know, she replied, determination spiking within her. I can't sit back and do nothing. As she made her way to the librarian's desk, something caught her eye, a small notebook, forgotten on the counter. Lila reached for it instinctively, her fingers brushing against the worn cover. It had the librarian's initials scrawled on the front. Lila. Be careful, Jared warned, glancing toward the exit as if expecting someone to leap out at them. Just a second. She opened the notebook, the pages frazzled and yellowing. Notes filled with hurried handwriting and urgent annotations jumped out at her. It was a collection of observations about the recent illnesses. Stories woven like threads, detailing odd symptoms: fatigue, dizziness, and strange skin rashes popping up all across town. Look at this, she said, pulling out a page and showing it to Jared. His eyes widened as he skimmed the notes. What's this? He asked, brows furrowing deeper. They're all connected. People who attended the town fair last week. Her voice shook as she realized the implications. They're all reporting the same symptoms. Before she could process it, a loud bang echoed through the library, startling them both. They turned, hearts pounding, as an older man burst through the double doors, his face pale, eyes wild with terror. Help! You've got to help me. People are collapsing in the streets. Lila's breath hitched, the world around her sharpening into focus. Oh no, can you help? Jared asked, a sense of urgency in his tone. She turned back to the man, adrenaline flooding her. What do you need? We can help you, she urged, feeling resolve harden in her gut. But as she stepped forward, she glanced at Jared. We need to act fast. There's more at play here. Then let us figure it out. A chill ran down her spine as realization struck. This moment would change everything. What would they uncover beyond this moment? The silence that stretched felt heavy with possibility. What horrors lay ahead, just waiting to emerge from the shadows? The man, breathless and frantic, was still standing in the doorway, his presence heavy with urgency. Lila's heart raced as she felt reality unraveling around her. What do you mean people are collapsing? She implored, her voice a desperate whisper. They're just falling down in heaps. I can't keep up. His words tumbled out, ragged and strained. I've seen at least 3 near the park. You won't believe it. Jared took a step closer to Lila. urgency pinching his expression. Are there any paramedics around? What's being done about it? The man's eyes darted behind him, as if he expected the crowd outside to burst into the library. They're overwhelmed. I have never seen anything like this. They're not just fainting, it's like they're losing their minds. You have to come quick before it's too late. This was not some ordinary health crisis. Panic clawed at Lila, thoughts racing. They were interconnected. It was spreading like wildfire. If they didn't act, it might reach them too. Turning to Jared, Lila felt the weight of their decision pinching her heart. We need to help. We can't just stand by. Are you crazy? Jared's eyes were wide, brimming with disbelief. What if it's contagious? We might be putting ourselves at risk. I know, she whispered back, looking deep into his eyes, searching for reassurance. But what if this is our chance to do something? We can't just, she hesitated, her voice brimming with fear. What if someone we know is next? With a pained look, Jared bit his lip, torn between instinct and loyalty. Finally, he nodded slowly, resignation washing over him. All right, let us go. They stepped out of the library, and the fresh air hit them like a wall. The scene outside sent a shiver racing down Lila's spine. People staggered about, expressions slackened, hands reaching out as if grasping for something just beyond their reach. Some were on the ground, groaning, while others clutched at their heads, faces twisted in fear. Over there, the man shouted, pointing toward the park. Hurry! They pushed through the crowd, making their way toward the chaos. Fear pulsated around them, thick and cloying. Lila's feet moved, each step making her more acutely aware of the dread creeping up her spine. As they drew closer, she spotted two figures sprawled out on the grass. Paramedics were trying to revive them, but it was chaotic. A crowd had gathered, murmuring anxiously, faces pale and grim. An elderly woman knelt beside one of the fallen, pressing her hands against him, tears streaming down her cheeks. Lila! Look! Jared's voice cut sharply through the din. She turned to see an older man approaching, face haunted, grasping at his throat. I can't breathe, he gasped, eyes bulging. Before she could respond, he dropped to his knees, gasping for air. Panic surged within her, freezing her in place. We can't just watch. I'll call 911, Jared barked, pulling out his phone. No. Lila's voice pierced the air. They're already overloaded. We need to help them ourselves. Her heart hammered as she rushed toward the man, kneeling beside him. Sir, can you hear me? What happened? His eyes darted, searching hers, desperation reflected back. Water, it's the water. There's something wrong. Lila's breath hitched as she connected the dots. The fare. The illnesses. The note. Could it really be the water? She glanced back at Jared, who had started speaking urgently on the phone. This was bigger than they'd imagined. Jared, the fare. The water was served there. She shouted, realization pounding through her. We have to warn everyone. But just then the ground shifted beneath them, a low rumble, almost like an earthquake. The crowd gasped and Lila shot a look toward the park's edge. What is happening? Jared shouted over the swaying trees. Lila's eyes widened with horror as she saw them. Dark clouds swirling overhead, gathering fury within their depths. She could sense it, a storm brewing both in the skies and around them. Run! She yelled as panic took hold of the crowd, people scrambling to escape, but Lila couldn't leave. Something darker was unfolding, and the truth was still buried beneath layers of chaos. Lila! Jared reached for her, but she was already moving, driven by a force she couldn't name. What was wrong with their water? And who or what were they really up against? As the wind howled and the sky cracked with thunder, her heart thudded like a drum, a reminder that they were still racing against time. Before the shadows swallowed them whole. The darkness wasn't just coming. It was here. What truths waited in the storm? The wind whipped fiercely, sending debris spiraling in every direction. Lila stood frozen, heart pounding as thunder rumbled overhead. The air felt electric, alive with a tension that made every hair on her body stand on end. She could sense that whatever was brewing wasn't just a storm, it was a reckoning. Lila! We need to get out of here. Jared's panicked voice cut through her haze of focus. He grabbed her arm, pulling her back toward safety, but she shook him off, her instincts screaming to stay. No, Jared. We need to figure this out. She could barely hear her own voice over the mounting chaos. but the urgency pushed her forward. Around them, people were stumbling like marionettes with their strings cut lost, disoriented, blank expressions filled with fear. She turned her eyes skyward, desperate to find answers in the churning clouds. As the sky darkened further, it seemed to pulse with foreboding. Each rumble of thunder echoed like a heartbeat, longing to unveil a secret too terrible to share. There. She pointed toward the distant monolith of the fairgrounds, still visible through the mayhem. That's where it all started. Lila, listen, Jared's voice faltered, overshadowed by a sharp crack of lightning that split the sky. Before he could finish, a fierce wind gust propelled Lila forward, and she began sprinting for the fairgrounds, the world around her a blur. She had to warn anyone left behind. The people who hadn't yet staggered into the park, the ones sipping water, still oblivious to the danger. Jared was beside her, despite his protests. What if it's too late? He gasped. What if the water's already hurt them? We can't think like that. She shot him a look of determination. If we don't try, it will be too late for everyone. They burst through the crowd, dodging frantic families and terrified attendees. Voices melded into an ocean of panic, drowning out reason. The vibrant lights of the fairgrounds loomed closer, offering a distorted sense of safety amidst the gathering storm. Hurry! Lila yelled over her shoulder, urging him forward. The fairground entrance loomed ahead, a welcoming beacon that now felt sinister under the swirling clouds. As they stepped through the archway, Lila's stomach clenched. The laughter and joy that typically filled the air had mutated into something darker. Distant screams echoed unsettlingly, and she felt the dread wash over her. What is happening? Jared's voice quivered, mingled with dread. They're in there. Lila answered, her voice a hoarse whisper as she gestured toward the food stalls. Everything felt familiar and yet entirely wrong. They need us. They moved cautiously, weaving through what used to be vibrant stalls, now eerily quiet. Lila's heart sank as she rounded a corner. There lay discarded cups and uneaten food. It was as if, in their panicked rush to flee, the revelers left behind their happiness, leaving only remnants of the fair's jovial spirit. Suddenly, a woman stumbled from one of the stalls, eyes wild and unseeing, mouth moving but producing no sound. She fell to her knees, grabbing Lila's pant leg. Help me please. Her voice was a choked whisper, filled with anguish. Jared instinctively reached to pull the woman up, but Lila held him back. Wait. We need to know what happened. Did you drink the water? She bent down, looking the woman in the eyes. The woman's gaze turned frantic. Yes. The water, it's poison. She shuddered as another wave of pain hit her. You have to stop them. It's not just us. Lila's blood ran cold. Not just you. Who else? But before the woman could answer, she convulsed, eyes rolling back. Lila gasped as Jared stepped back, horrified. What do we do? Thunder cracked above, a deafening roar that shook the ground. Lila's heart raced as she stumbled backward, intertwined with dread and purpose. They had to find out where the water was sourced from. Without answers, they were running blind into a storm, one that could swallow them whole. Look, there's a truck. She pointed at an enormous delivery truck parked haphazardly by the food stands. Its door swung open, the interior dark and shrouded in mystery. Should we check it? Jared asked, his voice barely a whisper. But before Lila could reply, the ground shook again beneath their feet, and the chaos of voices around them began to rise in a crescendo. The air grew thick with panic, the storm echoing both inside her and outside. A desperate call for action. Lila, we have to. Jared's words were drowned out as the storm unleashed a sudden downpour. Torrents of rain that blurred their vision. Let us go. She yelled, emboldened by adrenaline. They rushed towards the back of the truck, where a single light flickered to life, illuminating a dark secret waiting to be uncovered. What horrors lurked inside? And could they uncover the truth before everything became engulfed in the storm? The light inside the truck flickered erratically, casting monstrous shadows as Lila and Jared approached. They hesitated for a heartbeat, the weight of their situation heavy around them. The rain fell with relentless intensity, a curtain of water that blurred the boundary between the outside world and the chaos that lurked within the truck. What if it's empty? Jared whispered, casting quick glances over his shoulder, as if the storm itself could descend upon them at any moment. Then we'd be wasting time. Lila shot back. Her heart thudded. a mix of fear and resolve coursing through her veins. She reached for the door, its surface cold and slick beneath her fingers. Taking a deep breath, she swung it open with a creak that echoed ominously in the pouring rain inside. The darkness was suffocating. Boxes were stacked haphazardly, and the air carried the heavy scent of decay mixed with something metallic. She took a hesitant step inside, squinting against the gloom, the flickering light revealing something horrifying. The walls were stained, and scattered on the floor were crumpled paper sacks and empty jugs, markings of whatever sinister purpose the truck served. She saw something move out of the corner of her eye and jumped, heart racing. "Lila!" Jared grabbed her arm, yelling over the thunder. "What was that?" "I don't know," she replied, trembling slightly. The rain drummed a frantic beat against the metal roof, as if urging her to uncover the truth. Suddenly, from the shadows, a figure emerged, disheveled and hollow-eyed, with skin glistening wet in the low light. A man staggered forward, hands trembling, eyes wide with fear that mirrored Lila's own. "You shouldn't be here." His voice was a rasp, filled with desperation. "You have to leave." "Why? What is happening?" Lila pressed, her gut twisting. "The water. It's not just poison. It's controlling their minds." He looked past them, as if he could see the chaos unfolding outside. "The more they drink, the more they forget. Forget who they are." Jared stepped forward, skeptical and frightened. "How do you know this? What are you talking about?" "They created it." The man spat, voice rising. "A chemical concoction. The fair. It's a front. You must stop it." Lila's mind spun. Who created it? Who is behind this? Before he could answer, a loud crash of thunder shook the truck. The man's gaze darted toward the entrance, fear flooding his features. "They're coming. You need to go now." Without thinking, Lila grabbed Jared's arm again, pulling him toward the door. "We can't stay here. We need to find out what's happening at the fairground, and fast." As they stumbled back into the storm, the realization jolted through her like electricity. People were being lost, their very identities erasing under this malevolent force. And now they weren't just fighting for their lives. They were fighting for the souls of everyone in the fairgrounds. "Which way?" Jared shouted, trying to shield his eyes from the rain. Panic gripped his voice. "Back toward the main stage. I have a feeling that's where it all leads," Lila replied, setting her sights on the flickering lights way ahead. The chaos was louder there, like a heartbeat starting to quicken. They fought through the downpour, desperation fueling their steps. The fairground, once alive with laughter, now felt like a distorted reality, riddled with fear and uncertainty. Lila felt the weight of time slipping away. Would they be able to find the source before it consumed them all? As they rushed forward, they caught sight of a recognizable face emerging from the crowd, a dark-haired woman, her face taut with terror. Lila's heart sank. "Jane! Over here!" But when Jane turned, her eyes were glassy, vacant, as if she didn't recognize them. "Jane!" Jared yelled, but it felt like shouting into the void. The atmosphere shifted suddenly. Another crack of lightning revealed the looming silhouette of a figure standing on the main stage. The crowd was drawn toward it like moths to a flame. "What is happening?" Lila breathed, feeling the air around her thicken with tension. The figure raised their arms, and suddenly, a hush fell over the ground, as all eyes turned toward the stage. What was about to be unleashed? And could Lila fight against the tide of madness before it drowned them all? The storm bore down, and Lila felt time slipping through her fingers like the rain. Whatever was at work here wouldn't stop until it got what it came for. The figure on the stage became more distinct as the lightning illuminated their features, a twisted smirk that sent a chill through Lila's spine. It was a face she vaguely recognized, a familiar enemy twisted by the shadows of power and malice. She could hardly breathe, the realization hitting like a gut punch. "Hurry!" Jared shouted, pulling her toward the edge of the crowd. But they were too late. The silence was broken by a low hum, a sound that began to spread through the air, hypnotic and unsettling. "What the hell is that?" Jared yelled, eyes wide with panic. Lila glanced at him, then back to the stage, where the figure, now clearly visible, was performing some kind of ritual. The crowd stood still, entranced, as if the resonance of that eerie hum was threading through their minds, pulling them into its insidious grasp. "Lila!" She turned to see Jane moving toward them, her expression shifting from glazed confusion to one of recognition. You have to stop it. You can't let him control everyone. Jane's words were laced with urgency, but the hum grew louder, drowning out reason. Stay close, Lila instructed as Jane stepped into the circle of light cast by the flickering stage. Their eyes met and Lila felt a surge of determination. Jane was still in there, fighting against whatever power was threatening to consume her. They're all under his control, Jane shouted, desperation in her voice. That water, it's meant to make them submissive. He wants them to obey. What do we do? Jared asked, panic crossing his face as he scanned the enraptured crowd. They would need to free them. But how? The dude up there was clearly wielding some kind of dark magic, and it felt like they were standing on a tightrope, ready to fall into chaos. Lila spotted a chain-link fence behind the stage. That's our way in. If we can get through, we might be able to disrupt whatever he's doing. She nodded to Jared and Jane. Let us move. They dashed toward the fence, weaving through the hypnotized crowd as the figure on stage raised their arms higher. Light flickered around them, warping reality, pulling the audience deeper into his ominous performance. The hum intensified, vibrating through the ground and into Lila's bones. She felt its heaviness pressing down like a lead blanket, dragging at her mind. Fear clawed at her throat, making her gasp for air. The crowd swayed softly, an ocean of bodies drawn to the beckoning call of submission. Right here, Jared yelled, pointing at a gap in the fence. They slipped through, scraps of metal grazing their skin. Gritting her teeth, Lila fought against the wave of dizziness washing over her. They scrambled to the back of the stage, small shadows behind a fortress of lights and curtains. Lila's gaze locked onto the figure, heart pounding in her chest. What do? We need to disrupt the energy, Jane exclaimed, a spark igniting in her eyes. If we can get him focused on us, then we can turn his power against him. Lila finished, feeling a flicker of hope. A flash of lightning highlighted the figure's intense gaze as it searched the crowd for something. The hum faded momentarily, and Lila sensed the briefest window of opportunity. Now, they raced to the edge of the stage, voices raised defiantly. Hey, you don't own them, Lila shouted, grounding herself in that moment. For a split second the figure faltered, gaze darting toward them. It was a crack, a chink in the armor. But that moment was everything. She could almost feel the pull of the crowd as they began to stir, waking from their stupor. Keep going, Jared urged, his voice realizing the urgency. But before they could press further, a fierce wind enveloped the stage, knocking them back against the fence. It whipped around, dark and malicious, drowning out their cries. Then, the figure smiled, a chilling, predatory smile. You think you can disrupt him, why show? Lila's chest tightened. They were running out of time and it was now or never. Don't look away, she yelled. They had to stand together, but would it be enough? As the crowd began to awaken, jerking from the trance, Lila felt the weight of the storm inside, the very storm that had brought them here. Was it nature, or was it something much more sinister? Just then the sound of crashing metal echoed through the air as something dark and shadowy emerged from behind the stage. What was happening? And could they really stop whatever was festering in the heart of this chaos? The path forward was clouded by fear, but Lila knew one thing for sure. This fight was far from over. The storm had only just begun. The storm raged, both in the sky and inside Lila's heart. She stood her ground, determination coursing through her veins like fire. The eerie figure on the stage loomed, casting a shadow not just over the crowd but over the very fabric of their reality. She felt the weight of all those lost souls, the librarian, the patrons, her friends clinging to her heart, demanding action. Lila, focus. Jared's voice broke through the chaos, snapping her back to the moment. His eyes were fierce, filled with a spark she hadn't seen before. We need to create a distraction, something to pull his attention away. Right, Lila nodded, her mind racing. We have to reveal his true self. If people can see the truth, they can break free. Jane clasped her hands together, urgency etched on her features. Do you think that will work? The hum. It's binding them. It has to work, Lila whispered. She turned to the stage, swallowing her fear. We have to make ourselves visible, something he can't ignore. In that instant an idea sparked. Lila reached for the nearest jar that housed stage props, a glittering sphere. She could feel its fragility in her hands, but she was determined. If I can break this and create a distraction with the light and sound, it might just be enough. With a glance at her friends, she gestured toward the back of the stage where the audience's focus was fixated on the figure still shrouded in shadows. Do it, Jared urged, his voice unwavering. With a deep breath, Lila hurled the jar onto the stage. The impact explosively shattered it, scattering shimmering shards around like shooting stars. A loud crack and brilliant flash erupted, overwhelming the low hum that had wrapped the crowd in a trance. The figure froze, eyes widening, and for a moment, the pull of the crowd flickered. Lila seized the opportunity. Everyone, look away from him, she yelled, her voice cutting cleanly through the chaos. To her surprise, she saw faces shifting, confusion layering over the haze of obedience that had clouded their gazes. Slowly, but like a wave washing ashore, realization and horror painted their expressions. Jared grabbed Jane's hand, squeezing tightly as they echoed Lila's words. Wake up. This is a trick. The crowd was stirring, and as they shook off the ersatz tranquility, Lila pressed on, stepping closer to the forefront of the stage. Listen. You are not your fears, you are not lost. Fight it. With each passing second, the figure glared furiously, their facade cracking under the pressure of awakening hearts. Lila could see the crowd beginning to inch back towards their true selves. The spirit of resistance rekindled, but the storm roared in a cruel mockery of her hopes. The figure lifted their arms again, this time bringing forth an unnerving energy that pulsed through the air like thunder. You seek to defy me? They bellowed, voice mixed with the crackling winds. You will regret this. But Lila felt emboldened. No. This ends now. She took one hopeful step forward, leaving behind a trail of determination. That's when a frantic voice cut through the storm, piercing the darkness. It was the librarian, barely standing, but there she was, alive amidst the chaos. Her eyes widened with clarity and strength as she stepped onto the stage, the weight of her knowledge evidently returned. I know you, she shouted, locking eyes with the figure. You are not invincible. You feed off fear. Your poison is the very thing we can fight. A shared energy sparked in the air. The crowd, now revived with conviction, began to chant, each voice growing louder as they matched the storm's fury. We are not afraid. We fight together. Lila felt electricity surge through her as the figure faltered, their hold on the crowd weakening. Now, push back, she commanded the crowd, and they exploded into action with passionate resolve. They stepped towards the stage, an unyielding force of unity. Jared, Jane, and the librarian closed ranks beside Lila, their hearts beating as one against the storm as the tumult intensified. A crack of lightning lit the sky, illuminating a single truth. Love, belief, and courage could shatter darkness like glass. Remember who you are, Lila cried, her voice rising above the roiling winds. In unison, everyone around her roared back, power surging through them like a firestorm, breaking the spell that had bound them for far too long. The figure's sneer cracked, their visage unraveling, shadows pulling at the corners of their being. And then, with one last blitz of light and sound, the figure screamed. The ground shook beneath their feet, but Lila stood firm, encircled by her friends and the community forged together under the tempest. They were no longer puppets. They were again the authors of their stories. As the figure dissolved, vanishing into the shadows, the storm above the fairgrounds echoed with a different sound, the sound of freedom. Cheers erupted around them, filling the air with raw vitality. Lila stood there, trembling and breathing as life surged back into the crowd, and the storm faded, leaving a tranquil yet revitalized calm. Did we do it? Jane breathed, glancing at Lila, reverence in her eyes. Yeah, Lila smiled, her heart swelling. We stood together. And we won. Jared wrapped his arms around Lila and Jane, and the trio felt a sense of shared purpose in the aftermath of chaos. The community would come together again, stronger than before, filled with stories to share, hearts all the more alive. As they moved towards the exiting throng, the skies brightened, and Lila couldn't help but think her journey wasn't just about the stories found in books. It was about the people and connections in this chaotic, unpredictable life. In this moment, she resolved it was only the beginning. They would write their next chapters together. And just like that, in the heart of what once felt like an ending, Lila recognized it for what it truly was. A powerful new beginning. Now take a second to think about this. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on the next exclusive adventures coming your way. Smash that like button right this minute to keep the energy flowing. Let us make sure more of us can discover these stories. We want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. Share what you think may come next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Join this incredible journey, and let us keep the connection alive together.